Welcome to Just Break Up, the podcast about love, heartbreak, and all the relationship advice you don't want to hear. My name is Sierra DeMulder.
And I'm Sam Blackwell, and today we're going to answer a letter from somebody who regrets how she broke up with her ex. But before we begin, we just want to give you our Surgeon General's warning, which is that Sierra and I are not licensed mental health practitioners.
No, we are not. We are not trained in any of this, so please take our advice as you see fit in your life. We are only here to offer our humble musings to hopefully shed some understanding and maybe some laughs, like bare minimum, maybe.
We think we're funny, so...
Yeah. On the extremely... What is my line now? On like life and love, but it's mostly confusing.
Extremely rewarding, but mostly confusing experience that is love.
There you go. Sam Blackwell. Trading scripts 6 years in. All right. So today's letter is from Chelsea, whose pronouns are she, her, who is writing to us from Wondering in Wisconsin. I have been going back and forth through all of your episodes on heartbreaks and breakups because I chose to end things with my boyfriend the week of my birthday. Terrible timing, am I right? I dated my ex for almost a year and saw a future with him. He felt like the one, finally. I have a 13-year-old child from a previous relationship in college, and when we started dating, I let him know that I did want more kids. I'm 32, and we have had the discussion a handful of times about what I want to work towards. He said something shitty about me being busy with my kid, and it spiraled into a convo about our future. He doesn't know if he wants all that in the next 2 to 5 years, like I want, and asked for time to think, talk to loved ones, etc., to decide whether he wants the same future as me. 8 days go by, and he is absent on my birthday. Hadn't heard from him. I felt hurt. Why is this taking so long to decide if he wants to be with me? So I sent a text saying, I don't think it'd be beneficial to talk at this point. It was a knee-jerk reaction to my hurt. He gave some cop-out response and agreed with me. I'm missing him terribly and regret not having that final talk. I feel like the relationship ended messy and over text, no less. I don't want to get together again right now. I feel like we're both in different seasons of life, but I want to be on good terms for potential rekindling down the road and also for professional reasons. For context, he is deaf, and I learned ASL this past year and was accepted into an interpreter program. The deaf community is small, and we will most likely cross paths again. With help from my therapist, I sent him a text saying, I feel icky about how things ended. I know how I hurt him and regret that and would like to talk when he is ready so we can be on good terms. No response. It's coming up on a month from my last text, and it's all I think about. I want to write a letter, and I have a vintage gift I bought him before the breakup and so badly want to drop it off at his house. My friends told me no, that I've ended it, that ship has sailed. Any advice from outside point of view? My second question, if you have time, even though I did the breaking up thing, I'm still grieving the loss of a relationship. 2 of my close friends also went through breakups around the same time, but were the dumpees and have no sympathy for me. They reach out to their exes and stupidly hook up with them with no judgment. But when I talk about him or mention writing a letter or dropping off the gift, they are almost attacking in nature that I caused this and need to close the door and move on. I don't want to ruin friendships, but what is a good way to explain that I'm still hurting too?
All right, Chelsea, thank you so much for writing to us. You know, I think it is so difficult to be the one who initiates a breakup. I think we often think about it as being like really easy, like,
bad guy,
finally,
good guy.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've got a clean slate. I'm moving on with my life, and I feel great about this. And from what I know from the bajillion letters that we've read and my own life, is that like being the one who breaks up isn't actually any easier than the person who gets broken up with, right? They hurt for different reasons, for sure. But often the experience of having to tell someone that you don't want to be with them anymore can elicit all sorts of different feelings, including what you're going through, which is like a huge amount of regret, right? I regret how it ended. I regret that we're no longer together. I regret that we didn't have more time, or this thing didn't work out between us. There's so many different emotions that can come with it. So I'm sorry that your relationship ended. I'm sorry that you were the one that did it and that you now regret that. And I hope that you know that Sierra and I see how much this is hurting you, even though you were the one that initiated it. we're going to get into some advice about how you can move forward, as well as some commiseration about how difficult this particular moment is for you. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break.
All right, my darling, welcome back. And I echo all of Sam's sentiments. Breakups are never easy. And we have this like cultural narrative that there's good guys and bad guys, and that like you're sitting in your cushy dumper loft, like just feeling great about life. And we know that's just not true. We know we're way too complex of a species for that to be so black and white. So just a couple surface level observations to echo back to you to start with. Your friends are hurting and they are projecting what they need back on you. You know, like when I think about when I have been dumped and I really needed to flatten my ex into a one-dimensional person so that I could access my anger. You know, I had to flatten him so that I could make the breakup more palatable, because if I didn't do that, I would just miss him, you know? I would just love him too much. And I think that's what's happening here. I know it can be really hurtful because your pain is being unacknowledged. But I just want to offer that as a small perspective. And something you can do to maybe change the dynamic is to, the next time something is said like that, you can say, hey, I know that you guys are hurting and I know I broke up with him and I'm also feeling pain and regret. Two things can be true at the same time. And it doesn't make me feel supported if you shut down my feelings. If they're capable of feeling, you know, of receiving that, great. If you don't think they're capable of that, this just might be like a temporary, not so fun period of your friendships. I'm not like, oh my God, your friend sucks and they're being selfish. Are they saying things that are maybe making your experience less than three-dimensional? Yes. I think it's a product of their breakup. I don't know. I don't know them, but maybe that is helpful to hear. The other thing I want to say, in terms of your rekindling this with this person, specifically for professional reasons, I just want to say I acknowledge that and I see the importance of that in the community that you're working in. We obviously have the sacred rule of the black and distant, you know, create distance between you and the person you break up with, or, you know, we talk about that a lot and we joke about that a lot. But we also believe in nuance, and we want people to have positive relationships with their exes when and if possible, and if it serves both parties. And I just want to say, maybe he didn't respond to the text because it's only been a month, but that doesn't mean he's not capable of having a conversation 6 months down the line where there's more space and time. Things might still feel fresh right now. That's also, you know, I can say that at the same time that I acknowledge the fact that the way things went down, 8 days not talking to you, not reaching out on your birthday. Wow. Super shitty. Super shitty. The hurt is going two ways here. Like, that's another thing, is like, please don't flatten yourself out into somebody who only caused the pain. That's not true. You have pain too. He didn't reach out on your birthday. Like, that's basic humanity. You know what I mean? For somebody who you're technically still seeing.
For sure.
I just wanted to offer like the quick observation that not responding to the ex's text a month after breaking up doesn't mean you won't be able to have a more mature distance conversation down the line so that you can be in the same community together amicably.
Absolutely. Yeah. Also, he said that shitty thing about you spending too much time on your kid.
I know.
Your 13-year-old child.
That threw me off too.
I think that your friends are being a little bit insensitive to your experience, but I also want to say that I agree with them in the sentiment that they're trying to express to you, which is that I think you need to leave this person alone at this moment, right? You know, I think that you sent the text, you sent the Hail Mary and said, hey, I don't feel good about this. I want to talk about this. Are you open? And he didn't respond, right?
And he knows. Now he knows.
Absolutely. he knows you told him the thing and he didn't respond, which is an answer in itself that he does not want to talk to you. And I think it's important for you. And I think it's also important just out of respect for him that you respect the response that he's giving you, which is that he does not want to talk to you. And I know that that's really hard to hear, right? Like, I'm not saying this and it's like, yeah, so this should just be easy, like get over it, move on. What I'm saying is that like part of what I think you're trying to do is make amends for how you ended the relationship. And you can do that by respecting that he doesn't want to talk to you anymore. And I say this as somebody who was in a situation with somebody who broke up with me and then wanted to be in my life despite the fact that we were broken up and we had moved out of this place, and showed up at my house a bunch of times, like left me letters, left me things, and I didn't feel cared for. I did not feel loved. I felt uncomfortable. I felt unsafe that this person was continuing to try to contact me, even though I had made it really clear that I didn't want to talk to them. Right. And from that perspective, right, like, of course, this is coming from my own perspective of that situation, but I'll tell you, like them trying to get back into contact with me didn't feel good, right? It didn't work towards us making amends, right? Like, I will no longer talk to that person ever for lots of different reasons, but a lot of because of how uncomfortable I felt after the breakup, right? Like after the situation where I felt like he was not hearing that I didn't want him in my life at that point. And I want you to like hear that, because if you're thinking about what does reconciliation look like? What does potential rekindling look like? What does having a respectful distance with each other so that you don't like talk shit about each other in your small community? Part of that is about you letting him tell you that he doesn't want to be in contact with you, right? Respecting his boundary around this. And I will tell you, if this person had handled things differently at the end, we might still have been able to like be friends and acquaintances. But if for me, it was like the end, like the final straw was that like this person can't be trusted with me telling them I don't want to see them, with me telling them that I want my space from them. And I didn't say any of this explicitly. I just like blocked them on everything, and then I didn't talk to them. And when they tried to talk to me, I wouldn't respond, right? And then they showed up at my house, which was just like, no. Like this is crossing a line. And I'm saying this because I want you to hear it from the perspective of somebody who has received that quote unquote kindness from somebody who was trying to reconcile, and it didn't feel like kindness and it didn't feel like reconciliation. And I want you to hear that, because I do want you to not try and contact this man until he is ready to be in contact with you.
Yeah, that is such an important perspective. And I want to make sure that our listeners and our letter writer can hear that with an open heart for the truth that it is, and know that our desire to love people, like our desire to be with people, our desire to communicate with them, can feel so large and loud. And also we're capable of making different decisions. And it doesn't make us a bad person to our letter writer. Like, it doesn't, Sam and I get this. We've done this. We've seen this. We've received it and we've done it. Right. And so you can use this as an opportunity to have a response to these feelings and not a reaction. Like a reaction would be, I got to talk to you. I got to talk to you. If you're not going to talk to me in this way, I'm going to talk to you in this way. A response is recognizing that there's communication going on here, whether or not it feels good, or whether or not I can hear it, or whether or not people are actually talking. And time. Like, time truly does make things less sharp, more palatable. I know that things can hurt months and years after breakups. I know that. But we can also make healthy, safe, loving decisions from afar. Don't get me wrong, to our letter writer, like, I am the queen of sending that email. I am the queen
really
of shooting those text messages. I've done that so many times in my life. And I slowly learned that lesson. And let me tell you, the last time I sent that email, I pressed send and I immediately regretted it. I was like, I had no place being in that person's life. I had no purpose of sending that other than that I wanted them to know that I was thinking about them. And all of a sudden I had the perspective that was caretaking for me and not them. Letting them know that I wanted to talk to them. It was all about me, and it took me so long to learn that lesson. And I still have to fight against those instincts. But, if there's a future for this relationship, whether rekindling or a respectful discourse professionally, it's got you need a little bit more distance, and we need to access that response instead of the reaction.
And I think I think what Sierra said is really important because, her reaching out to her ex was like an attempt to caretake for herself. You know what I mean? Like it was what's the word I'm looking for? It was like translated into caretaking for another person. But I think that's what's like really key here, which is that like for you, letter writer, right now, you need care. Right? Like you're going through a bad breakup with somebody who you liked and who did a bunch of really shitty stuff at the end and who now won't return your text messages. Like you need care in this moment. And I think that like you are assuming that care needs to come from some sort of contact with this person, some sort of like conversation or closure. And maybe that is true. Maybe that would be super helpful, but that's not available to you. So what are the other places where you can find care for yourself? How can you tend to the wound that you're experiencing right now, the sharp pain of losing someone, the aching of wanting to return to that person and have them back in your life, right? Like the discomfort of knowing that you handled things poorly and there's not a chance to fix it, right? Like what are the things that you need to do to support yourself in this moment and to like actually give yourself enough of grace to recognize that like you're going through a hard time right now, right? What does it look like in therapy to, instead of being like, how do I find a way to make amends with this person, instead to talk about, I'm feeling really shitty right now. I feel terrible. What do I need to do to take care of myself? What are some of the ways that I can be kind and gentle and hold myself with tender hands in this moment, right? What does it look like for, instead of you talking to your friends about like, how do I figure out how to talk to this ex, to instead say, I'm really hurting right now and y'all aren't seeing it, right? I need more support from you because I'm hurting over the fact that this relationship ended, that it ended poorly. Yes, I ended it, but it was because of a bunch of really shitty reasons that were happening to me, right? What does it look like for you to do what people do when they get dumped, right? To take care of yourself, to watch Netflix, to eat ice cream, to go for runs, to buy yourself a bunch of clothes, to whatever it is that helps you sort of sit in how shitty all of this situation is. And I want you to do that because I think there's this narrative that's happening for you that you somehow need to make amends with this person in order for this to hurt less. But I don't think that that's what actually needs to happen. I think you need to tend to the hurt right now in this moment. How does it feel in your body? What do you want more of or less of? How do you need to pause and take time to do what you need to do for yourself? Because that's really where I think the healing is going to come from, and not from trying to extract some sort of response from this person who's made it pretty clear that he doesn't want to respond to you.
Yeah. Let me just say this too. I know that you're feeling a ton of regret for sending that message, and that you feel like it was a knee-jerk response. And that might all be really true. But to be honest, sometimes in my life, I have wished that I had been able to draw the line as hard as you were when I knew I was being treated poorly. It's not appropriate to say that you're busy with your child, right? It's not appropriate to go no contact for 8 days that overlaps with your birthday. Like, I'm sorry, but there's no world in which I wouldn't, even if we were on a break, even if we weren't talking, and how easy would it have been to say like, hey, I'm still figuring my shit out, but I wanted to wish you a happy birthday. I hope you're having a great day. How differently would that land here? And I know right now I can be so quick with my own self-loathing that regret can feel so much bigger than my actual hurt, right? Because the regret allows us to fixate on what we could have done different. Like, oh my God, I fucked it up because I sent this knee-jerk thing. I don't see that. I don't see that. You might have fucking, pulled the trigger on this or whatever we want to say, but he did so much to lead to this. You were pushed to be here, right? So I want you to have some compassion for yourself, because all of this pain is becoming fixated. It's funneling to this regret, which is real. I'm not saying, all of your feelings are real and valid, right? You're hurting, you miss him, and you regret not having a final talk. You don't like the way the relationship ended. That is so much to grieve over. But what I don't want you to do is blame yourself, because the relationship ended for 100 different other circumstances other than that just one text, just that one text.
For sure.
That's not what ended it, right? And so if you could relieve yourself of the responsibility of being like, man, I wish I have done it differently, and start seeing the bigger picture here. All of this is painful and all of this is hard, which makes it harder for us to caretake for ourselves, to access our responses instead of our reactions. Like, this is all hard, and we feel for you, and we want you to feel loved and cared for, truly.
All right. We hope that this helps. I think that there was a little bit of some tough love in here, but I hope that what you leave this conversation with is a recognition of the fact that, like, Sierra and I see your hurt, and we also know that hurt needs tending to, and that it can't just be distilled down into you're the bad guy for causing the breakup, but instead thinking about all of the different reasons why this relationship that you had a lot of hope for, that you really wanted to work, didn't happen, and that you are now without this person in your life, and how difficult that is. And we see how difficult it is, and we love you and want you to be able to give yourself the time and care that you need to actually grieve this relationship instead of focusing on things that are outside of your control. So we love you.
Thank you so much for writing. We hope this helps. All right, friends, it's Friday, which means this is the blind date segment of our show. Every Friday, we like to shout out something that we love, that we want to set you up with. And this week, we are sending you home with
a blind date from Peter, my partner. I was like, I don't know what my blind date is going to be this week. So I texted him and asked him, and he said that I should recommend Chucky season 3 on Peacock.
You know what's so funny is that Peter actually recommended a movie to me that was like this, sci-fi, queer, super thoughtful film, sent me like an article on it, and like was like, I had so many emotions watching this movie. It really moved me. And I love that he chose Chucky instead.
That's really funny. Actually, I could talk about that movie because he really did love it. It was called I See the TV Glow, I think is what it was called. He said it was really good, but he did recommend Chucky, and here's why. He's a horror aficionado. He loves all the horror movies. And he is like, they're doing a really good job with this iteration of Chucky. It's a series that's on Peacock at this point, because it's like funny and campy and irreverent. It doesn't take itself too seriously. They recognize how silly the premise of Chucky is, which is that there's like a doll that tries to kill people, even though like its arms are too short to be able to like do anything to anyone. Like it's like a common thing in the movies where it's like, how did Chucky hold that knife when he has tiny arms? But it's great. It's got Jennifer Tilly in it, who is like amazing, just like a very funny, campy actress. Devon Sawa is in it as well. And in the 3rd season, Chucky goes to the White House, which is apparently very funny and campy and ridiculous. So if you're into horror, if you haven't checked out the new Chucky series on Peacock, you should. And Peter says specifically you should watch season 3 because it is the best so far. So thanks, Pete, for bailing me out of having to think of a blind date. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you would like more content from us, you can support us on Patreon. If you support us on Patreon, you'll get access to weekly episodes as well as to our monthly office hours. You can support us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. That's patreon.com/justbreakuppod.
You can slide into our DMs, send us your favorite relationship memes, but most importantly, you can submit your questions about all matters of the heart at justbreakuppod.com, which is also where you can find our merchandise.
Please remember to like, follow, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review. This literally keeps our mics on and helps us reach more brokenhearted souls who need 2 random strangers giving them relationship advice.
Just Break Up is a production of Duvid Media, original music, recording, editing, producing, all magical things by our good friend Spencer Worth Davis. Make sure to check out his podcast and his music And remember, sometimes when something happens that we don't want, we can fixate on the one or two things that we think we did to cause that. But so often what happens in our life is the cause of 100 different circumstances all coming together. And we can free ourselves of the responsibility or the blame and actually start to care for the hurt that we have. And if all else fails,
just break up.